I'm going to preface this by saying that you should probably have this on in the background while you're doing other things. You just play a video game, do your chores, whatever it is you have to do. Treat this like a podcast almost. There's no video, nothing interesting to look at, just me and my words, unscripted. I recommend that you do something else while you listen to this and keep your hands occupied and enjoy my thoughts. This part was pre-recorded before the rest of it, so I was just here to let you know and give you a heads up in advance. Thank you for listening.
Today I was actually not terribly busy. This was a very refreshing change, and I thought, I got some time today. Why don't I dedicate it to, the Magneto Testament, the next thing on our list? Unlike the circumstances for when I read the previous miniseries for which I read the previous miniseries on the reading list, Wolverine Origin 2, I was not held prisoner on a toilet, suffering in absolute misery. Here, I was just calm and thought, you know what? I have an hour to kill before dinner's ready. Why don't I read this? And I did. It was really good. Now, the Magneto Testament was a miniseries created in, I think, 2009. And this was originally written by Greg Pak, known for his legendary work on the Hulk. His run on the Hulk is probably the second best run since Peter David left, because he was dethroned for best when Al Ewing came out with the Immortal Hulk. Greg Pak wrote this. In terms of art, the pencils were by Carmine Di Giandomenico, and the covers were by Marko Djurjevic. I'm not familiar with Marko Djurjevic. Let me look up some of his work real quick. Does cool, hand-painted looking covers. Okay, neat. I know Carmine Giandomenico from his work with Chip Zdarsky on Batman the Knight. That's the only thing I know him from. And his art there was really good, and it's actually a bit different from his art here, which is... It's very much like what you can tell it's him. If you know his art, you know it's him, but it's also different in a way. The covers here look great, by the way. Djurjevic's covers are great. I only had 5 covers to work with because this was a 5-issue mini, and there was no variant covers because this was before variant covers became the mainstream. So to fill out the space where a 6th cover would be, I found a Magneto sketch by Giandomenico, and I put it here. Giandomenico's work is primarily with DC. He's done a few things for Marvel, specifically their Italian branch, because he is an Italian artist. Originally, this project came because Greg Pak was approached with the idea of writing a Magneto origin series. His original thought was, I'd love to, but then he thought, well, Chris Claremont already showed Magneto's backstory and backup stories from classic X-Men, and he's shown it in flashbacks in The New Mutants and other things. So we've already got a lot of Magneto's backstory pieced together. What would a origin series have to bring to the table? Kind of like how they knew with Wolverine Origin that a series showing Wolverine's past could be extremely boring or stupid, so they decided to focus primarily on his childhood and very, very late teen years, and I guess early adult years too, especially in the last 2 issues. Here, they came to the conclusion that yes, we should focus on Magneto's childhood, because we've seen his adulthood, Okay, so... For a bit of context, Magneto was created as nothing more than just a villain, a madman, who just is a mutant supremacist. That was just who he was, and that was all he was supposed to be. When Stan Lee and Jack Kirby created Magneto, he was meant to be nothing more than just a rival to the X-Men, a villain who led a team of mutants to be the antithesis of the X-Men, and that was it. And I've read a lot of Magneto's early appearances, even outside of the X-Men, and he is a very boring villain. I totally get why Chris Claremont wanted to avoid using Magneto for so long, because this guy is a boring villain. He's simple-minded, there's nothing all that interesting about him, and every time he shows up outside of an X-Men book, it's just, after the X-Men comic got cancelled, they only appeared exclusively in guest appearances, and Magneto appeared as the villain in a Avengers and X-Men crossover happening in the Avengers comics. You can actually read this in the X-Men Epic Collection volumes, which is how I discovered this. And reading it, I just thought, wow, Magneto is lame as hell. He kidnaps most of the Avengers and all of the X-Men pretty much. He makes Scarlet Witch do sexy dances, and that's it. And it's what? And he goes yes, the X-Men and the Avengers are now my puppets. And it's excuse me? I know it's sacrilegious among a lot of old head comic fans to say that Silver Age comics are bad, because it is a very, normie and stupid sentiment to just crap on Silver Age comic books, because they're old and they're different. And it is unfair to do that. In fact, I stick up for Silver Age X-Men against all the people who say it sucks. Generation 1 X-Men has value and merit, damn it. But Magneto is a terrible villain. He sucks. There's no other way to put it. Chris Claremont avoided using Magneto for so many years because Magneto sucks. That's just it. And he decided, how can I make Magneto interesting? Because, a good writer can make something terrible work. And he thought, well, Magneto is not a character who has any depth or anything to flesh him out. Why don't we flesh him out and give him depth? Why don't we make him an interesting character? And that led to his backstory, where we learned, I think in a Avengers comic where he appeared, that part of why he's evil is because his wife was killed by a group of rioters or something like that. And yeah, that's sad, but Chris Claremont thought, what would be a good backstory for Magneto? And he made Magneto a Holocaust survivor, which was a very bold and interesting thing to do. No longer is Magneto just this horrible villain. He's now a Holocaust survivor. He survived one of the greatest man-made tragedies in our history. And that just makes so much sense. That would shape his hatred for humanity. He lived through that. You don't come out of that unscathed. And not only that, Chris Claremont decided to make Magneto a Sonderkommando. If you don't know what a Sonderkommando is, these are the Jews who the Nazis conscripted to help kill other Jews. And if you were a Sonderkommando, your only option was, yeah, I'll help you kill other Jewish people, or you'd freaking die. Magneto, Eric, he had to commit and participate in just absolute horrors and help kill so many people, so many fellow Jews, because it was either that or die. He lived one of the harshest pasts you could possibly imagine, as a child no less. I mean, this was just a brutal history here. We never even got to see much of this. We learned in a flashback that Magneto's family was killed trying to escape Poland, and that was all we knew about him. So Greg Pak, when he started writing this, he studied the subject religiously. He worked with several organizations devoted to preserving the history of the Holocaust and what the Jewish people there went through. His goal was to portray the Holocaust and what Magneto, Eric, goes through as accurately as possible. His other goal was to take all of the established history with Magneto that had been written up to that point. And again, this is decades of comic books. Not everything is going to line up perfectly. So everything we learned about Magneto's past up to that point, and give us the definitive, this is it, no BS version of it. And yeah, kind of like how I said Wolverine Origin was barely an X-Men comic outside of the fact that it stars a child version of one of the most famous X-Men and shows them growing up. This is the same way, but for Magneto, because there's nary anything X-Men related here. This is just a very brutal and historically accurate piece of historical fiction. And it is a heavy and depressing read. This is not something you can just put on and enjoy. This is a dark and sad book. There is nary a moment of joy to be found in the entire experience of reading this, which I think is the point. First, though, before we get into the story, I want to talk about the art. First of all, the penciling. Giandomenico's pencils are great, but this is different from what I know him for with Batman the Knight. Hichikara, when she read this, compared Giandomenico's penciling here and the way he draws people to, I'm trying to think of his name, he worked on this anime, Alexander Senki, and that's what she said, I think, and Aeon Flux. Let me pull up our DMs and find the guy's name. Peter Chung. Okay. She said it looks like Peter Chung's art in a way where everyone is so detailed that they're almost hard to look at, and I couldn't agree more. It is just, there are a lot of parts that are sparse in detail, very detail light, which works, but also the people, the human figures here, are detailed so much to the point that it borders on grotesque. The way people are drawn here has so much detail that it is almost grotesque to look at points. You can see so many individual wrinkles on the faces of characters. You can see all the stains and scars someone has. It is very hard to look at some of these people, especially when we get to the later issues where we're in Auschwitz, and it is just Everybody looks so horrible. Just, oh my god. It is hard to look at. And I think that's very much the intention. The art at points is disturbing, and I think that's the point. But not necessarily disturbing in a, oh my gosh, the stuff they're showing. They actually don't show you a lot of the most horrible things in this book. And I think that's actually for the best. What your imagination could give you with what they tell you is probably far more horrifying than anything that Gian Domenico could have possibly drawn. But it's just the way that characters are drawn, the way everything's drawn is just, it's really good art, but it's very hard to look at too. Like I said, you'd have to just look at it to know what I mean. I'm gonna say this right now. So much of Magneto's past, which is shown here, does not really come up in future books outright, aside from the odd flashback here and there. So if you just want to experience the comic vicariously through my general synopsis that lacks some of the major key moments here spoiled for you, then go ahead. And if you want to go read it yourself, then sure. This is a very powerful and sad book, but it is great. And I thought it was incredible. Okay, so now we get to the spoiler section. Immediately, right off the bat, this is of interest to me because I'm a huge history buff. So when we start in Germany during the 1930s, I'm already hooked. It starts with Eric as a young child growing up in Germany. We hear Eric's father talk about how he served in the Great War, which was what they called World War I back then, because they never expected there to be another war that was worse or as big as that one. So it was just known for decades as the Great War until World War II happened. The term World War was not common nomenclature used to describe it back then. So they think everything is fine in Germany, but we're getting into the Aryan regime slowly shifting in, and young Eric is participating in school. He's making a necklace to give to Magda, this girl nearby who he has a big crush on. And it's all made of these metal scraps he's been finding, because his father, since the war ended, is now a metal worker. He works by fixing metal links and lockets, necklaces, bracelets, things like that. And his father is very proud of him. And he's participating in a lot of the athletic programs at his school, where he is outdoing a lot of the Aryan boys, which upsets people. And one of his teachers, a fellow Jew by the name of Kelb, tells him that, hey, you might want to watch out because you're exceptional, you're better than all the other kids. And if you keep being better than all the Aryan boys, they're not going to like it, and they're going to do something about it. And Eric's like, okay, I understand. And later, he has to do the javelin toss. So they all throw these metal javelins, and Eric's travels the furthest. So he wins the gold medal, and nobody is happy about this. Nobody except Eric. All of his family is so proud of him, and then he gives the necklace he made to Magda, and then Kel meets him at the school the next day and tells him, the girl you love is watching, and you just had to show off to her, didn't you? And then he goes to class, and they tell him, like, the boy Eric used a tampered javelin and cheated. He is to surrender his medal and give it to a proper Aryan boy, unless he can prove that with a true regulation javelin that we supply him, he can throw it just as far. And Eric agrees, okay, I'll do it. So they give him the javelin, and it's heavier than the one, it is actually heavier than the regulation javelins. He brings this up to Kelb, and Kelb just tells him, like, don't worry about it, just throw it. Because he knows that if he doesn't do this, it's going to look bad. And like, oh, he's admitting the cheating. So he throws it, and it actually goes further than the first one, the lighter one. And they're thinking, there's no freaking way this is possible. And because of that, he gets expelled. They kick him out of the school for cheating twice. But you and me, we all know his power is magnetism. He doesn't know it yet, but his will to throw the javelin further is making the javelin go further with his magnetic powers. He's not conscious or aware of them yet, but his powers are starting to bud and activate a little bit on a subconscious level, and we first see that with the javelin toss. And I believe that he gets expelled the same day that either Hitler is appointed chancellor or President Hindenburg dies, and wait a sec. His name is Hindenburg? How did I not... Hold on a sec. This never clicked with me. His name was Hindenburg? What? You share a name with a bad disaster? Jeez. Oh my gosh. Wow. Imagine sharing a name with such a horrible disaster. Yeah, guys, I think now would be a bad time to tell you my last name is Le Mans Car Crash. I don't know how else to tell you. Okay, I'm sorry. Enough of my goofiness. We're moving on. So, yeah, this happens to coincide with Hitler's ascension to power and the installation of the Nazi regime. In the next issue, we pick up things aren't looking good for Eric and his family. They have to go somewhere else. His father saved a man's life in the Great War, and that man is now in a great position of power in the German government. And he talks about how, oh, the old German president said that we Jews were German enough for him. All of us who fought in the Great War were proud German heroes. And I saved the life of someone who's now in a position of great power over there in the German offices. I think that he can show us leniency and he can help us out. So Eric and his father traveled there to try and make a deal with him, but when they try to go up to him, they're assaulted by German soldiers. They're like, "Are these Jews bothering you, sir?" And they just beat the ever-living snot out of Eric's father. The man tells him, like, stop, he's learned his lesson. Then he's like, "But I saved your life, and I could have let them kill you. Now we're even." So they go travel around a bit from place to place. Eventually they decide to go to Poland. And it just so happens, because what horrible luck, they're at Poland the day Germany invades. And this is the start of World War II. So they're trapped for years in this ghetto in Poland where they ration things out to just 160 calories or something like that to every Jew per ration, and that is just not enough to live off of healthily. His sister, Ruthie, becomes malnourished and gets very weak. They're all having to pitch in to try and give her enough food to keep going. And Eric learns to smuggle and steal and be very sneaky. He grows detested with the Germans here. In issue number 3, we see a lot of life in this ghetto, and families are squeezed into one room. Gigantic concrete walls topped with barbed wire and broken glass. It is a nightmare for anybody having to live there. Everybody's trying to pitch in to give Ruthie enough food to keep her from just starving to death. She's a young girl, she's growing, but her health is just taking a big decline due to the lack of nutrition. Eric's father is growing increasingly weaker, so it's up to him and his uncle to basically do most of the providing and trying to make sure things are okay at home. The family that they have is Eric, his father, his sister, his mother, and his uncle. One day, a lot of the Jews there are rounded up and taken to the camps. Thousands of them die in the process, and Eric and his family try to make a desperate escape. There's a Jewish woman who's been offering safe passage to other Jewish people to get them out of there before this happens. And unfortunately for Eric and his family, she was leading them into a trap. They have the girl's mother. The only way for her and her mother to live would be to have to go along and help them trap other Jews. And they're all rounded up into a firing squad. Poor Eric's sister, who is drawn to be very cute, is just like, what's going on? I'm like, oh God, no, don't, no. That just made this hurt so much more. And we learn that the girl who led them into this trap, not only is her mother already dead, but they're going to kill her with the rest of the Jews she helped gather there. And everybody is killed and thrown into a big hole in the ground, just in a mass burial. Again, on a subconscious level, Eric's powers activated, and the bullets missed him. So Eric crawls out of the hole with the corpses of his dead family members and dozens of other Jews. And he's finally out of there, and he's caught, and then the next issue opens with him taken to an internment camp. He's over there at Auschwitz, and he meets his old teacher, Kelb, who's there as a worker, sorting through the belongings of the others. And he tells Eric how to survive. Tell them that you're 18 and you want to work. They won't kill you if you can provide them good work. And Eric's like, okay, sure, I'll do it. And then it works. But unfortunately, due to a mix-up, Eric is brought into the Sonderkommandos, not the group that sorts through belongings like Kelb is in. And Cal was like, oh God, no, I can't protect Eric if he's in the Sonderkommandos. He's going to have to be doing far more horrible work. He tells Eric, like, I promise I'll do everything I can to get you out of there while I breathe. And then we get... So, you know, in comic books, how they do these double-page spreads to show really awesome moments they want you to really take in. They do this in manga, too. Any manga readers here also know they do that there, too. It's a common thing in comics. The double-page spreads are awesome. Well, the double-page spread here that stuck out the most with me. There's a scene where Eric is adjusting to his new job as a Sonderkommando, and then he opens the door, and he finds all these metal cups, spoon things, each person at the camp was given one. He opens the door, and they're piled up so high that they're taller than him. And the entire page is just his shocked reaction at seeing it. It's 2 pages, just a big spread like that. And shortly after that, we're given another haunting double-page spread, this one being the start of Eric's manifesto. And he talks about all the horrible things he's had to do as a Sonderkommando. He goes into detail about some of the atrocities that he's had to help them commit. And it is not a fun thing to read. And this double-page spread is completely black. Occasional panels break up the words but it is all just black. The bottom half of the page is just one long panel that is just all black. The top several panels, both pages together, it's a big spread with the bottom one, and it's all black, and it just captivated me because art in comic books gives you a certain expectation. You expect something to be a certain way. When you see a double page spread, you're expecting the art to jump out at you and be something that's really amazing. But here, the lack of art just caught me off guard as I read this, and I had to use my imagination to fill in the blanks. And yeah, it's like I said earlier, what you think of in your imagination is probably worse than anything that they could have shown you in illustrated form. And it is a powerful thing. And he says that he's witnessed personally at least 250,000 deaths. Finally, he reaches a point where there's no one left, and he has lost all hope. He is nihilistic, bitter, he cares nothing. It is just sad. And then he finally sees Magda wearing the necklace of random metal scraps he's made her all those years ago as a child. And he tells her what to do, the same way Kelb did to him when he first came to Auschwitz. Go get a job with the nurse, and you'll be guaranteed better living conditions and extra rations. You're over there in the gypsy camp. I'm telling you this for your own safety. And we learn that he's been stealing the gold teeth from the corpses of the Jews he's helped burn, so that way he can use them as bargaining chips to bribe the guards and get things. So everybody in the camp is talking about any day now, the Americans are going to bomb this place. Either we're going to die in the Inferno or be saved. And a lot of people think that they're going to die in the Inferno and that their best chance at survival is trying to start an uprising themselves. He bribes a guard to let Magda get on this train to another camp because he learned they're liquidating the gypsy camp. All of them are going to be exterminated. And he's afraid for Magda's life. He bribes him to get Magda off to another camp, and he asks the guard why he'd let him do that. And he said, she's just going to die anyways. The camp she's going to is the one where they run experiments on all the little Jews before they kill them. She's going to be cursing your name under her breath before she finally kicks the bucket. Eric learns later that the train was returned. Half the people were killed, the other half were just returned here, and now Magda's back, and she's most definitely going to die here and soon. So now it's a race against time. Find a way to get out of here and take Magda with them before she's killed. And the comic ends with I'm not even going to say it. Go read it yourself. Those of you who are knee-deep in Claremont-era X-Men and know that like the back of your hand, you probably know what happens to Magneto and Magda and how this all plays out, but it's very much worth seeing it play out in this book. Its ending is powerful, and Magneto's manifesto that he writes there in Auschwitz is a powerful and sad read, and it's haunting when he says that Eric has died here in Auschwitz, and this is all that remains. And it's kind of like, well, we know he lives, but it's just kind of like the Eric that he was has died. This is the birth of Magneto proper. That's just depressing to think that the good, promising young man died there in Auschwitz, and all that's left is the bitter nihilist who hates mankind with every fiber of his being. And the way he just says, tell it to everybody who will listen, and shout it to those who won't. We cannot let this happen again. It is just so powerful. I was floored the first time I read it. Going back to this again, this miniseries hit me on an emotional level that I didn't quite expect it to again. I had Hichikara read this, and she was moved by it. She said that it was very interesting seeing a part of history she knew very little about reflected like this. And when I told her how historically accurate it was, it shocked her. Like, oh my gosh, the fact that it was not only as bad as we see here, but probably worse. And that was really kind of powerful, hearing her reaction to it. This is a powerful series. Bravo to Greg Pak for this. I mean, seriously. He really did his homework, both from a historical standpoint and a Marvel Comics lore standpoint. He gave us the best of both worlds in a powerful and poignant package. I don't know if I'd say this is a masterpiece necessarily. It might be, though, because I can't think of a single problem I have with this comic. I don't have anything I want from it or think it should be better. I just left moved by it. It hit me the first time, but rereading it again, after taking into account what Hichi told me when she read this a while ago, it just really hit me. Just, wow. This is definitely not in the ranks of personal favorite or anything like that. But this is worth reading because when you hear Magneto is a Holocaust survivor, you probably have a few ideas in your head of what it is he went through. But to viscerally experience every step of that journey and see it like this was just such a gut-wrenching kind of thing to have to sit through. And this is a hard read. You're either going to be sickened by this, moved by it, bored by it, and it's just one of those three things ultimately. Like I said, this is barely an X-Men comic outside of being the origin story of Magneto. This is in most regards just a piece of historical fiction, a very historically accurate one at that, showcasing the Holocaust. I've heard this was used in schools as a teaching tool to teach people about the Holocaust. And I can see it. This is going to sound completely weird, considering I'm talking about a Marvel comic, but this is like the Marvel version of the Diary of Anne Frank. And I don't mean that as a joke or something weird. I mean that in a completely unironic sense. And you can laugh or think I'm being weird now, but just read it for yourself and you'll see. This is highly recommended. I give this a 10 out of 10 on the number scale. I was just moved by this, and I think you could be too if you read it and gave it a proper chance. You might think, oh, Greg Pak, he's the guy who did a lot of cool Hulk stuff. World War Hulk, the whole Planet Hulk thing. But he really just knocked it out of the park here with a sad drama, with a very sorrowful and human story. I think that this is probably the first 10 out of 10 on the reading list so far. I have to say, this is just incredible. So join me next time for a double feature of Wolverine Volume 2, number 1000, and Wolverine Volume 3, number 32. Number 1000 is a special commemorative issue focusing on Logan's time in World War II with a couple of miscellaneous stories set there. And Wolverine Volume 3, number 32 is a horror story about Wolverine working at a German labor camp. It'll be really cool to revisit these and see them again in fresh eyes now that we've just come off of the Magneto Testament. Oh my gosh, this series. And you can find both those Wolverine comics in question in Wolverine Prehistory, and you can find them on their own as individual comics in a form much easier than the last thing we talked about, Wolverine Wild Frontier. So, what did you think of the Magneto Testament? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you get sad? Did you find it amusing? Did you... Actually, why would you hate this? Why would you hate this? Like, what? I can't imagine this backstory for Magneto being any different. I don't know why you'd hate this. If you do hate it, tell me. Like, yeah, any thoughts on this, please tell me. I'd be happy to discuss this. I love talking about comics. So leave a comment below, reach out, discuss this with me. Hear your thoughts. Love to hear them. Love to talk about this. So, until then, I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.